These are going to be conversations you're going to have with your kids throughout their growing up years. Something that they need to know versus something that they have to know. They're not always going to want to understand the difference, but it's very important to know that some things are survival skills and some are merely necessary competencies. You get a lot of necessary competencies in the schooling, in the formal education. Not all of it's a survival skill. In fact, very little of it frequently is a survival skill. Most of it is a necessary competency because there's a test and you have to be able to demonstrate that you can learn what you need to learn and pass the test. That's how you're allowed to go on to the next level of schooling or life, whichever. So, understanding the distinctions of survival skill versus necessary competency. With the really young, survival skill will involve how to get dressed, how to put on your shoes, how to take a bath, how to swim. These are all necessary survival skills. How to deal with animals, how to talk to other people. Necessary survival skill, not necessarily taught in school. With school, you have to be able to do your English work, you have to be able to perform math problems, you have to know a certain amount of history and all that. The main survival skill in school is getting the task done within the time allotted and doing it correctly. And also the discipline of staying on task. These are the survival skills in school. The necessary competency is what you get tested on. It's very, very different skills. When you're a little older, the survival skills include things like maintaining a house and a car, cooking for your family, shopping, how to spend money correctly, how to budget for the family, how to get up and go to work, how to find a job that you enjoy, how to do laundry, how to maintain living creatures like plants or animals or children, leadership, how to communicate with other people, especially in different roles and different positions in society, how to take care of your health, how to handle the small boo-boos in life, caregiving, first aid. These are really important survival skills. Very, very little of that is something that you're going to learn in school. A necessary competency would be involved in a particular kind of work, like say if you work in the insurance field, a necessary competency is going to be knowing something about insurance, knowing how to use a computer, knowing how to write a letter. Those are all necessary competencies. If you don't have those, you won't be able to do the job. Work skills. You need to know how to arrive and leave on time, how to use your time correctly so that you're not just wasting it or doing unproductive things. Having the right attitude. Now that's a survival skill and a necessary competency both. Having the right attitude. If you go into things with a negative attitude, you're going to have a lot harder time making something good happen. Plus, it's going to build up over time and you're going to have more and more of the not so wonderful things happen. So going into things with a positive attitude, a can-do attitude, and doing it right the first time makes for a very large difference in how you're creating things in your world. It's also important to know how to do things correctly, do it quickly, and anticipating the needs that are going to come up. Those are all necessary competencies, and some of them are survival skills. Personal skills would involve relationships, emotional expressions, nurturing, creative expressions, communicating, the physical acts of living with somebody, maintaining the space. Those are all survival skills. Now it's curious why we don't teach more of the survival skills so that people can live as competent adults. Instead, we spend 12 years or more in school learning things that are really not going to benefit and aren't even going to be used much in the real world once we're out of the school. So why do we spend so much time teaching things that are really not going to help? Why do we spend so little time teaching things that really matter? And leave those things to the vagaries of parenting and people that don't even necessarily have that competency themselves. If you don't know how to do it yourself, how are you going to pass it on? Yet that's the kind of teaching that most parents are entrusted with, and it's not reinforced with school or pretty much anywhere else. So it's not a surprise that we're living in a slightly dysfunctional to a whole lot dysfunctional world where people really don't know what they need to know to be able to survive and thrive. And there's a whole lot of difference between surviving and thriving. One of the most important things for really thriving would be loving what you do, doing what you love, um, loving the people around you, having a good attitude. These are all cliche things that we all have heard before, but they're still really, really important. And we really need a lot more education about how to be self-empowered, how to be fully who we are. We're taught a whole lot about how not to be who we are in school and places like that, where you have to conform, you have to be the same, you have to do things like everybody else does. And that really makes for a lot of confusion about, well, but how about if that doesn't fit? What if I don't fit that mold? Makes for a lot of internal conversations about I'm not acceptable, I'm not worthy, I don't fit. And then that leads to all kinds of mischief in one's life. And it can go on for the entire life. So many of us are being run by unhappy children that made a declaration about, well, I'm never going to let that happen again. And so they spend their lives protecting themselves from that happening again. And in the meantime, miss out on most of their life. We're not taught about how to have the internal conversations going on with ourselves, whether they should be empowering or disempowering. Most of us have a whole lot of internal conversations going on about how we're not good enough, or how we don't know how to do something, or how we can't do something, instead of conversations that we could be having about, yes, I can do this, I want to learn how to, I want to do this, I want to experience, I want to express. There are no limitations other than what I choose to accept. And then moving forward powerfully. Most of us are taught to fear rather than love. And really, that's one of the most disempowering things that you can have, is not knowing that there is a lot of love in the world. In fact, that's the main thing in the world. It's only our fear that keeps us from experiencing that. It's our fear that keeps us from connecting with each other. Our fear that keeps us working so hard to try to get ahead and thinking that there's only a certain amount of anything in the world, and so there's scarcity, there's fear, there's all kinds of problems that get created by that. There's a lot of greed that results from that fear of not having enough. Fear is really never the basis to come from. And when you have a very powerful emotion about something, you're going to tend to call that into your life. It's going to show up. And if you're focused on what you're fearing, you're going to create more of that. You're going to experience it, just so you can realize that there is not really anything to be afraid of. There is a lot of love, and you can choose to love, and you can choose to focus on what you love. And you can choose to create more of that love and empower other people, give to other people so that they have a greater experience of themselves. That kind of focus tends to work out really well. It empowers other people, and then it comes back to you. It's really important to choose what is actually present in your life. You have to understand that it's there for a reason. It didn't just happen randomly. Whatever has showed up in your life is there for the lessons, for the experience. It's something you've called to you. So look for what it is that you chose to experience about that. Choose the experience. Recognize that it's divinely perfect right now for its time and place and for your growth. It's a very empowering context to come from. You don't fight what is. You're not trying to swim upstream. You're going with, okay, this is present. There's a reason for it. Let me embrace it and accept it and see why I brought it into my life. A lot of people think there's a lot of chance going on, but it's really not. It's more of a synchronicity. It's divine timing. Things show up exactly when they need to for who you're being and how you're being. And those are the lessons that you need to look at right now for your greatest personal growth. There's a lot of practices for powerfully living that we don't get taught in school that we really need as a thriving skill. And that includes things like meditating, exercising, having powerful conversations with ourselves that aren't, tearing you down or telling you how you can't do this, can't do that, but telling you that you can and supporting you in let me keep trying even though this effort was not a success. That just gives me tools for the next effort and being able to persist through all the obstacles and all the challenges. It's said that I think it was Thomas Edison and was creating the light bulb. I may be wrong about the name, but he discovered 1,999 ways a light bulb did not work before he finally found the way that it did. That kind of persistence tends to overcome any obstacle. With enough effort and time and focus, we tend to achieve what we want. So figure out what you want and then go for it. See yourself as having it. Look for the different competencies that you need to be able to achieve so that you can live the life you want, have the job you want, have a healthy functioning relationship with the people in your life. The necessary skills, the survival skills, those you have to know. And you've got to get your kids understanding that this is a survival skill, this is a necessary competency. With kids in school, learning the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division tables, those are survival skills because they will use those throughout their life. Learning how to perform an algebra calculation, not so much, unless you're in certain fields. But part of the exercise, the survival skill part of it, is having the discipline to sit down and learn something that's really not going to matter in the long run and still learning it well enough to be able to pass with the grades you need to pass with. That's the discipline, the persistence, the learning. You never know when you're going to need it, if you'll ever need it, but the ability to be focused and do things that have to be done in the time allotted, that is an absolute necessary survival skill. So have those conversations with your kids. Yeah, I know that this isn't going to be something that you'll ever use, but you still have to know it to get out of school. These are some other things that you need to know, and finding ways to learn what you need to know, where to go, putting the practices in place. Those are survival skills that we have to have. Yes, that's not the same survival skills our foremothers and forefathers had, but then they were living with a different technology, a different age. Technology is now a necessary survival skill. It didn't happen to be that way when my grandparents were alive. Technology was a lot lower level. And that's going to change over time. And being able to change with the changing times is truly the ultimate in survival skill. Learning how to adapt, how to shift, how to not resist the changes that are coming in, how to flow with them, how to flow with the changes life is going to throw at you. Those are survival skills worth having. And those aren't necessarily taught in school, but they should be. So, survival skills versus necessary competencies and how to live a life powerfully, those are all things well worth looking at and well needed by your children. That's all for this topic for now.